Today, when you watch the original Star Wars trilogy, it passes by in 6 hours. And in an age of binge watching, that's nothing. But at the time, it was the end of an era. For us, it wasn't 6 hours, but 6 years. The same year that the original movie had come out, the VHS machine hit the market, and we watched it over and over again. We also listened to the records, the radio dramas, the cheesy TV movies, and behind-the-scenes laserdiscs, and, most of all, played with the toys. My cousin and I collected almost everything, and we created an ongoing epic tale. Luke was not Luke, Han was not Han, Leia was not Leia. They were our own characters who had entirely new adventures. So when the final chapter of the movies was at last released, we had come to the end of our collections. There would be nothing more that was new. It was the closing of a chapter in our lives. Every week when a new episode came out, my friend and I wrote to each other with the same 2 words. Dude. Andor. We just couldn't believe that someone had done something so smart and mature with Star Wars. Just when we had given up on the franchise, along comes this. And it was only about to get better. Early in this arc, we get the point of it. While Dedra recognizes the heist on Aldhani as
an announcement,
Luthen confirms it to Mon Mothma.
People will suffer.
That's the plan.
This speaks to the truth that people often remain complacent until they suffer enough to rebel. As long as it's someone else suffering, or merely being inconvenienced, they will keep their heads down until the storm is past. It is not until the problems come to their doorstep in large enough ways that they finally act. Luthen has set things in motion so they get this bad for enough people that they finally rise up, knowing that the Empire will predictably fall right into it. Cassian becomes the example of this. He goes home to try to get his mother Marva to come away with him. By the way, this is another comparison of the contrast in the mother theme. Cyril went home after he failed. His mother represents his failure. Cassian went home after he succeeded. His mother represents his success. It's another way to contrast protagonist from antagonist. Anyway, his mother says she has to think about it. And he goes to Bix and sees the troubles have come to their doorsteps. Still, he will not stay. He may be the protagonist, but he still needs the trouble to come to him directly. Anyway, his mother refuses to go with him. She's going to stay and fight the Empire. But she knows it's unrealistic for him to do the same.
You can't stay, and I can't go.
So away he goes. Notice that the establishing shot of the resort he goes to matches the music from the beginning of the series when Cassian was at the brothel. I don't know if this was trying to say something about escaping to one's vices or not, but it's an interesting comparison. You'll later see it at the wedding. Anyway, Cassian gets arrested over nothing. I heard this criticized, but it's exactly the point. He is plucked up off the street over trumped-up charges and bullied into prison. This is what is literally happening in the real world, in my own country. People are grabbed off the street, whether guilty or not, and sent away without trial. The government is even admitting that they're doing it without due process. One man in particular they've admitted is innocent, but they don't care. They want him sent away anyway. Others they've left in a foreign torture prison, again, without trial, just because they can. Nimick said it best.
The pace of repression outstrips our ability to understand it, and that is the real trick of the Imperial thought machine. It's easier to hide behind 40 atrocities than a single incident.
This is real. And it's portrayed here as a way of expressing issues through allegory. Once again, what sci-fi and fantasy are all about. Tony Gilroy has spoken openly about how he originally structured this story around not the current state of the US, but the history of fascism and dictatorships. But if the shoe fits... The show would next explore the very concept of prison itself. Interestingly enough, it would not only show it through Cassian, but it showed the prisons all the characters in the series have made for themselves. Cyril is framed like a prisoner at his desk, with his arms held out similarly to how Cassian's hands are held down in the transport. Bix will soon become a prisoner, and while Mon Mothma is surrounded by luxury, she is a prisoner to the society which creates all these problems in the first place. She is in a morality prison, an ethical person surrounded by unethical people who, if they find her out, will have her executed. She is condemned to put on a perpetual performance to save her life. Although, hot damn, have you been noticing her outfits? I'm not into fashion. In fact, I'm lucky to get on sweatpants. But I know great costuming when I see it, and wow! Did they ever nail it on this show? Anyway, the show purposely cuts between the high society party and the prisoners suffering under the oppressive rule those very people have created for them. I could particularly relate to this moment, when a group of people are talking over something important, but when it becomes clear that something needs to be done to help the people of the galaxy, one of the guests makes a joke, deterring them from ever doing anything about it. While I've never been in the company of senators, I think we've all seen plenty of interactions where people made a joke rather than facing realities they didn't like. The prison itself takes influence from George Lucas's first film, THX 1138, the perfect choice not only because of its style, but because of his intention. He had made it as a short film while working for the United States Information Agency, an organization which made propaganda materials for the government. It got expanded into a feature under American's Otra Pictures, produced by his friend and colleague Francis Ford Coppola. The story is about people living under an oppressive regime, wearing all white in an all-white environment. In the end, the main character has to escape to the surface. They even had music for one of the episodes, which matches that from the original movie.
Tighten up!
The electrified floors were added in this, and to enhance the effect, notice how many close-ups they do of people's feet, and they rise the tension by having people get off the floor just in time. Even the directing style is very much like that of the 70s. This is an example of respecting not only the material you are covering, but the inspirations of the material. Tony Gilroy has said several times that he was not a fan of Star Wars, but he grew an appreciation of it. Maybe because he got work on it, who knows? But that's not what's important. What causes a filmmaker to make a great work within a franchise is a new vision, but a respect for what's in the franchise. For example, Nicholas Meyer had never seen an episode of Star Trek before he directed The Wrath of Khan. But he made a great movie because he respected the franchise enough to look at it and make sure to include elements that made it great while adding ideas of his own. Just like Meyer, Gilroy constantly considered what had been made before him, and he made a great effort to make sure everything he created still matched everything from before, while adding ideas of his own. That is what makes a great addition to a well-established franchise. Now, before I go on with the prisoner storyline, I want to say something about the Bix interrogation, the torturer. We've seen villains who look and sound evil. If it's a more quirky movie, we see villains acting happy-go-lucky. But this one exhibits something that I think is another ongoing theme of the series, oblivious evil. He smiles at Bix, and confides in her like he's sharing his enjoyment of the torture, as if he expects her to be as interested in it as he is, like she's not the one who he's using it on. And he genuinely doesn't understand why she isn't interested. The device itself is one of the most diabolical types of torture, the very thing you want to include in sci-fi or fantasy, where you see elements which do not really exist but could within your universe, which are creative and interesting, and make a statement about the real world. You are then able to see something about the characters around it by showing how they react to it. Just watch the way Dr. Gorsh talks about this thing.
A sort of choral, agonized pleading. It's quite unlike anything anyone had ever heard before. There were 3 communications officers monitoring the documentation, and they were found hours later huddled together in various states of emotional distress in a cruel space beneath the ship's bridge.
It's like the machine is a son he is proud of, and he cringes at what happened to the people in the recording the same way you would at someone who stubbed their toe. Again, the willful obliviousness to suffering, a common sort of evil, yet one that is different than is usually depicted. More on this later. For now, let's go back to the prison. When Cassian first arrives, the other prisoners ask him about how people are reacting to what's happening to them. He doesn't know. He had no knowledge of them, or their punishments. Again, consider the real world. How much do any of us know about what's happening to the people sent away without trial? This goes to the theme of this part of the arc. Nobody's listening. Cut to the parties. They're talking about policies in the abstract.
Nobody's listening. Nobody's listening!
Speaking of which, when Mon Mothma tries to bring up the subject of overreach in the Senate, notice how they portray other senators choosing not to listen, by shutting off their lights. It's a great storytelling tool to get across the idea of not listening, even though the light has nothing to do with whether or not they can hear it. A mechanical sound is synced with it to create an unconscious link with the action. That way, when they cut away from the other lights going out, you can hear them shutting off, even on a close-up of Mon Mothma.
I believe that when we enter this building, we are in a temple.
For now, let's go back to the prison. They utilize a system which has been effective in fascist regimes. Use the prisoners themselves to keep everyone in line. One man with a strong personality is chosen. He is given a promise of freedom for himself if he just gets the others in line. He also has the benefit of never having to do the work they do, and never having to be punished with them. He, in turn, squashes any grumblings or thoughts of acting up. He serves as a conduit from the guards to the men, and an informant from the men to the guards. And it all works on a basic belief that Kino will be released if he just hangs on a little longer. Played by the always amazing Andy Serkis, you see the journey he takes written on his face. It goes from determination and leadership to anger for being questioned, to the crumbling seeds of doubt, to diminishing hope, to near panic at realizing what the truth is, but not wanting to accept it. Then there's one last bout of anger before at last acceptance. And once he's done that, he can return to determination and leadership, but this time in a different direction. It's much like the stages of grief, and you see in Serkis's performance exactly the way this should play out. Just as crying is the act of trying not to cry, acceptance is the act of denial resisting the truth. During this arc, there are some nice subtle touches. For instance, Melji, who continues on to Rogue One, is the prisoner next to Kino, placing him where he hears all of Cassian and Kino's conversations. He becomes a sort of extension of Kino. Also, there's this moment when the power drops for a little while. That's when the prisoners on level 2 are fried, but you don't know it until later. Also, the designs on the prison uniforms are the same as what will later be used on the Rebel X-Wings. Also, there's Andor's plan, which is based on an understanding of engineering in the bathroom, and how he can cause the floors to short circuit, the sort of understanding he would have had by working at a place like Ferrex. He continues this knowledge when he gets to the main control room.
Caught the power.
Most of all, a theme is established as he incessantly asks Kino.
How many guards on each level?
Kino refuses to answer, until he has nothing left to lose, thus ready to rebel.
Never more than 12.
This leads to their confrontation in a room where they're alone. The power dynamics shift throughout the scene, as portrayed through the blocking. One character's close to the camera, the other is seen through the crook in his arm. Until at last, Andor has won. He's convinced Kino, though Kino does not know it yet, and Andor orders him to get on program. The music resets itself and rises as they walk across the floor, the electrical floor, as seen through the red lights, following close behind. Everyone is asking what's going on. Everyone is demanding an answer. Andor gives them a partial answer, but they are not convinced. And then...
No one is getting out!
Everyone grows silent. They all trust Kino. Andor knew that if he convinced that one person, he convinced them all. After the final episode of this arc played, the text message between me and my friend changed. When the prison arc began, I was a little confused as to why they would be placing their main character in a cell for a quarter of the season. As it came near its end, I realized that this was the story of how Andor became a rebel and a leader. The prison itself is a microcosm of the Empire. It's even shaped like the Imperial logo, or is the Imperial symbol created out of the prison shapes. All the cruelty and control is displayed here, so just as in any profession you'll start small and build your way up, so too is this the training ground for the real thing. And speaking of the real thing, notice the build-up to the escape. It's a masterclass of tension and excitement. They begin with the introduction of the war cry.
One way out.
The music begins low but intense, as everyone does their jobs and their parts, getting into position while eyeing the control room above them nervously. Cassian continues his work in the bathroom. The music takes on a new rhythm, faster now. The positions of the Imperials are established. We begin to wonder if Cassian will be ready on time, but everything is moving forward regardless. It's the point of no return. The music gets faster as the shots are close in on the work. The waterline at last breaks, and now the music comes to the forefront, a rhythm akin to a gallop that's still growing faster. Andor comes out of the bathroom, and now the pieces are all set. The music stops. Stillness. Suspense. The alert siren sounds rhythmically. We hear the heavy breathing of a couple of prisoners. We cut to the water running. It has to make its way out, but it can't leak too quickly. We see the prisoners from the front, and we see them from behind, holding their weapons. Except this guy. I wouldn't trust him either. The music creeps in again, quietly, Slowly, it builds, then stalls again when the plan begins, then starts again as the action gets going. The prisoners fight back. Major characters die unceremoniously. The guards use their primary weapon, the floor. Kino tells everyone to climb on the tables, but notice that he does not himself. This was where he expected to die. We'll learn why later. The music stalls again as they learn the situation. And then... Now the music and the action become unstoppable. The prisoners climb out and make their way through the prison. Throughout the battle, you see guards being human beings who are just at their jobs for the day, not as sadistic monsters. That was this guy, and he's dead now. You even see them hiding in fear. And when they reach the headquarters where the deep voice has been coming from, we find that it's someone with a high, nasally voice and a wimpy disposition. The Wizard of Oz, basically.
5-5, 5-3, 5-6. Burn a firewall around it. Try the whole level. Make the epicenter 5-2.
Too late.
The Emperor has no clothes. That's not a request, Palpatine. You leave your robe on. Hee-hee! And at last, that brings us to one of the infamous monologues of the show.
It has to be you. Come on, Kino.
Speeches like this should be studied by writers to understand what makes them work in the moment, why they move us, and what else they are saying outside of the confines of the show. In every monologue of this program, it begins simply enough by acknowledging what is happening in the moment and the character's basic surroundings. Kino says who he is, what has happened, and what everyone needs to do. That would be enough for simply providing information, but he wants to give them the courage to escape, so he turns to the man who gave him the courage to take action, and says what that man had said to him.
We will never have a better chance than this. And I would rather die trying to take them down than giving them what they want.
And then he continues, building with intensity as he speaks. Notice, by the way, that when Kino says he's the day shift manager on level 5, we cut to the night shift manager of the same level. He's the one who tests the floor, because he's grown to trust Kino. Then he's the one who leads the others out. He names several things that make him angry, which gives the actor something to latch onto as a reason to keep building upon the intensity, while he continues to give instructions, which wisely includes having the escape be upward, which plays into our subconscious feelings that freedom is up.
Building is ours. You need to run, climb, climb!
Climb! Climb!
Climb! Climb!
A theme is established. One way out, which he repeats several times until everyone is repeating it as they escape. Hell, I think half the audience was shouting it.
One way out! One way out! I'm mad as hell, and I mean one way out!
But then we learn the most important part of the monologue, something you don't see on a first viewing because it happens a couple minutes after the end of it.
Can't swim!
The first time I saw this moment, I thought it was a mistake. How could he not know the place was surrounded by water? He would have seen it on the way in. Then I got goosebumps when I realized he did know it was surrounded by water. That, ultimately, was the reason why he was so hesitant to attempt an escape. His change becomes all the more substantial, his decision more moving. It brings new meaning to when he said that he's considering himself already dead.
But I'm gonna assume I'm already dead. And take it from there.
It also explains why he took so long to start the monologue.
Tell him what to do.
And why he was shaking, even crying, during it. He was helping everyone escape, except himself. He's their Moses, and in the end, he's smiling, even laughing when he tells Andor he can't swim. He won't be going with them. He will be staying there to die. Kino's arc, ultimately, was to show Andor an incredible act of selflessness. And then, of course, there is the most infamous of monologues, Luthen's. First, from a directing standpoint, notice how this is framed and staged. Luthen is standing confidently, his cloak blowing in the wind, framed perfectly in the hallway. Lonnie is standing in sickly green light, his hands together insecurely. Luthen then walks forward twice. The camera follows him when he does. This provides Luthen with a control over the scene. He then begins the monologue the same as Kino's, stating facts in the moment, then moving on to bigger ideals. But what makes Luthen stand out so much is that it exhibits what great monologues always do. The art of saying something without saying it directly. It's 90 seconds long, and if he was speaking directly, it would be one word. Everything. But instead, he uses metaphors and prose to make a larger point. What is everything when it comes to giving up your life to defeat authoritarianism? What does one have to do? What does one have to become? The writers listed it out, then found ways to say them in indirect and more florid ways, all while making sure it's the sort of words Luthen would choose. It's a little like laying out a road, then building a dirt road beside it. Both go to the same location, but the dirt road takes a little longer and has a more scenic view. The result is something that both makes its point within the story and says something to people in the real world, and not only in the here and now, but for all time. There's a reason why people have said this monologue is Shakespearean. Monologues from his plays are still relevant to today because the characters didn't just speak about their immediate surroundings, nor the momentary issues of the times in which they were written. For instance, Hamlet could have just said, "Should I kill myself? I don't know. It's hard to stand up to my uncle, much like it's hard to stand up to Greenwich Palace." But instead he said, "To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or take arms against a sea of troubles." Those lines not only sound better, they say something that resonate today, hundreds of years later, while still fitting within the play. So when Luthen says,
"I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts,"
he is talking about the sort of guilt that would exist with anyone who has taken up arms against a sea of troubles and who is condemned to use the tools of his enemy. And, like so many in history who have sacrificed so we can have comfortable lives, he knows he will be forgotten. But rather than saying that so plainly, he says,
"Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything!"
That is powerful writing which will last long into the future. This has been part 3 of my series covering Andor. I'll be releasing a new episode on the 1st of every month, so if YouTube doesn't recommend it, come on over to the channel to see if it's been uploaded. Also, if you agree with my views on storytelling, you might want to take a look at my books. The link to them is in the description below. If you're a Star Wars fan, you might want to take a look at Relic Worlds. It's a mixture of Star Wars and Indiana Jones. We've recently released a game for that series called Relic Worlds Adventures, which you can also find in the description. And speaking of games, we'll be launching Sanctuary on Kickstarter October 23. It's about rescuing cats and finding them homes. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, or know anyone who is, follow that link. Thank you all for watching, and happy travels, everyone.